Hi guys, Paul from the innovation community here. Today I'm with Kshira Saagar, who is the Group Director of Data Science and Analytics at Global Fashion Group. Now, Kshira is probably one of the most prominent Australasian data science leaders in business today, so we're lucky to have him with us. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Paul, and very kind words, so thank you for that.
Just tell us a bit more about yourself to start with.
Cool. So I am a data scientist by trade. Like you mentioned, I take care of data science for one of the largest e-commerce, fashion e-commerce entities in the world. So we call Global Fashion Group. And what I do in my role is I help the team here make better decisions with their data. So I call myself a decision enabler rather than anything else. Although data science, like as you would know, is a widely bandied term, and there are so many. It's an umbrella term for everything. We do a lot of things in that umbrella spectrum, but at the end of the day, what we try to do is help people make smarter decisions. And it could be employees making better decisions with their lives, not having to spend 2 hours every day in the morning doing the same thing they do. It could be customers who get to shop better and find things easier, or it could be merchants who are able to sell things better and make better profits. So it could be any of these three sets of people. And my job and my team's job is to make sure that their lives become better. And we do that using data and technology. So that's what I do for a living.
And where did your career with data really start?
So right out of uni, I was lucky to get into a company whose tagline was "Do the math," and so I was a big fan of math growing up because of high school teachers being influential in teaching us math in a way that we can appreciate and understand. And so my first company was a consulting company that gave consulting in data analytics for 1,400 companies. So we'd go in, work with them on a 3 to 6 month basis, solve their problems, and that's where my career started. And when I started, it would not be just one industry or one domain that we work with. So for 6 month period, we'd work with an aircraft industry, trying to help them solve where should they land their planes and what gates should they use using route optimization algorithm. The next 6 months would be working with retail companies, trying to do their email personalization algorithms. Then the other 6 months would be with a banking company trying to do anti-money laundering and other kinds of fraud. So just really, I was lucky to be at the right place at the right time, trying to solve all kinds of problems that 10, 15 years ago, people are trying to solve with data. And so that's where my career started. And then slowly over time, I started honing that more towards customer-focused data problems and retail data problems, because that's the one that I thought. I keep telling people that people express themselves truly in 3 areas: retail, which is shopping, gambling, and the third one I can't talk about, but you can guess what the third one is. And so those 3 areas are the places where people express themselves truly. And then there's a rich assortment of data which you can use to then make better understandings of customers. So that's where I spend most of my time.
And what are you up to in your current role?
So I call my current role the ABC role. So ABC stands for I'm an advisor. So I act as the advisor to the group CEO and the regional CEOs of the e-commerce entities to help them make sense of a decision that they want to make. What is the impact of making that decision? So what are the pros and cons of it? Doing some quick analysis. So that's the A part of it. B is I call myself a builder of team and trust. So I build teams that actually help me solve those problems at scale. And I'm sure you know this, and you've spoken about this a lot too, is the biggest challenge with the data area is trust. People don't want to trust it if it doesn't make sense. People want to trust it completely if it makes sense, and like if it ties with their ideology. And so building that trust is the toughest part. And then C is basically creating value and coding, as I like to call it, depending on who I talk to. So that's the ABCs of my role. And I typically say my role splits into 65% of A, which is advising and doing stuff, 25% of B, and then the remainder 10% of C. So that's what I do.
Brilliant. So I really like the way that you broke the role down there. It really makes it clear as to actually what you're doing on a day-to-day, which is cool. So had this passion for a very long time. What really interests you about working with data?
I typically think about this question from a lens. If there was no data, if there's no technology, what would I be doing for a living? And I tell people, if there was no data and there was no technology, I would be the guy who would find lost and found stuff for you. The guy who says, oh, I've lost something, find it for me, or I don't know where it is, find it for me. And that's who I am. I like to solve problems and find things for you. And I think because of data and technology, I do that using computer and code. And so that's what I really enjoy about this job, which is people come to me with a problem or with a challenge that say this is tough and I need to solve this, and I'm able to solve it. And I see when the light bulb goes and say, aha, this has made my life easier. And that's what I really enjoy doing. And that's why I've been still in this career area of being in data and working in data science.
Well, good thing for both of us that there are data functions and there is data. What are some of the major successes that you've achieved over your career?
So I'd say there are two kinds of successes. One is from a business transformation point of view. In the last couple of places I've worked, everywhere we've had a data team. It's gone from I don't trust this data team or the data team can't deliver to I completely believe that this team can actually add value, and we believe that it's no longer a good to have function, but it's an essential function. So getting that mindset shift in businesses, all the way from like somebody who's working in the front end to the senior executive level. So that's one big success I would take credit for and give credit to my team for. And the other one, the one I really enjoy more, is actually mentoring and working with people who go on to again build their own data teams and do that more. So that passing that on thing is the one that I really enjoy. Is because I've seen a lot of people who I've worked with, who I've mentored, go on and actually build their own data teams and do much more amazing things, become Kaggle grandmasters and stuff. And that is really more exciting to me. So I think that's the part I really enjoy more than the first one.
And tell us about a time you affected major business transformation change in an organization, what the challenges that came with that.
So the one that quickly comes to mind is one, like a couple of roles prior. I used to work for this firm called The Iconic, which is an online fashion retailer in Australia. So we had around 1,000 odd people in the business, and there's this big thing that they want to do, which is we wanted to make data available to everyone. And when I say data available to everyone, the one challenge we took upon us was we will build a platform where everybody in the business can log in and see how the business is doing, where the challenges are, what is causing it, everything. And I'm not talking just about commercial or operational or marketing or customer. A commercial manager should be able to log on and see what marketing budget was spent in the last few weeks and what will be spent in the next coming weeks. Or a marketer can log on and see what products are going to come on site, what inventory we have. Or somebody from operations can see how finance is. So we wanted everyone to have visibility in everything. And to build a platform like that, yes, if you were super cash rich, you could go and buy like 1 million licenses and then buy some of these softwares in the market. But what we wanted to do was really took it upon as a challenge, and we built something in-house. We built a visualization platform in-house using open source tools. And then we brought it to a level where everybody in the business who has at theiconic.com.au can log in, can see everything that they can see and they should be able to see for their role. And so that has changed how people operate. When I walk around the offices in the morning, first thing, when COVID was there and people could go to offices, I could actually see people open up this dashboard and check the numbers like every hour. They're checking what's happening. We have live dashboard showing. So, and that changes how people think, people operate, and every team has its own dashboard that shows their performance. And that's something I'm really proud of. And so there's even an acronym for it, something similar to IKEA. It is TADFT, which is there's a dashboard for that. If you have a question, there's a dashboard for that. So it's TADFT as we call it. So there's a dashboard for everything. And that's I think something that I'm really happy that we did.
Sounds like a brilliant program. I mean, what role did technology really have in that particular transformation? And another question on the back of that, what effects do you think this will have on the data landscape moving forward?
So from a technology point of view, the biggest challenge was scaling this. So if you think about 1,000 people using, say, whatever, we had 800 odd dashboards at any point in time, it needs to be massively available for every single user without a downtime. The backend for the data needs to be available all the time. So all of those are very challenging. Apart from the mindset and the cultural challenges, the biggest challenge is making sure you have the right clusters behind it, the right pods spun up, you have the right infrastructure behind it. So those are things that we really need help on. And because it was an open source technology, there are always a lot of gotchas that you don't know. You don't have somebody you can call up and say, hey, give me commercial support for. So we use a lot of our technical team's help to debug code, and then actually we committed back a lot of code to the open source repository. So that's where technology played a huge part. And also making these things available securely, which is the biggest concern because you're making numbers available. So you need to have two-factor authentication, all that stuff baked in. So making them available securely on a mobile device, anywhere and everywhere, that was a big challenge. So those are things that technology made happen. In terms of how that changed, I think people if you know how things are happening, you're going to behave differently. So for example, if you get live scores on a game, you're going to behave differently to when you know the score results after a match is over. So so your sense of reaction to things is going to be different. So we want everything to be as exciting as a football match or a I don't know if they call it a soccer match, football match. When, for example, you're watching a match, you want to know what's happening right now, and that excitement, you get to participate in it. You can't change the course of the match, but at least you get to participate in it, and that's what we want people to do. We want people to be able to participate in the business rather than just say, "Yep, I've seen the number 1 month online. It's not going to do anything for me." And people can also slowly start taking incremental changes to how they run their areas in the business.
Brilliant. So what do you think was the biggest impact that you ever made on a transformation?
So this part is the one that so this is a good example. The one that I spoke about is a good example of how we made a big impact, because everybody in the business has an awareness of what data is, what we have, what we can do, and what is possible. And I think creating the awareness is the hardest challenge. Anybody in marketing would tell you that awareness, getting people to know that you exist and things can happen, is the biggest challenge. Once that happens, then the smart questions start coming. And the really good example I gave is when I joined the Iconic, I met the head of menswear. And then he came to me, and he and his one of his team members came and gave us 15 questions and said, "These are all the questions that we have about menswear. Who's buying menswear? How many women buy menswear? Yada yada yada, all of this stuff." And he said, "Take it away. Take 6 months and come back with all the answers." And we said, "We don't need 6 months." And then me and a couple of other people sat in a room. In 15 minutes, we answered all those questions. They were basic, simple SQL questions, and like, "Yep, here's all the answers. Now what?" And so that now what is what we want people to do. Like, all of this is easy. It's all done. Now ask us the tough questions. And to ask tough questions, you have to start thinking about things from a different angle. You just can't say, who are buying menswear? You're going to ask questions. What brand should I buy? So that, yeah, right. And so you guys start asking tough questions. And that means we'll have intellectually strong problems to solve. And that means the business will grow because we're answering tough questions. So I think that's the cycle that we try to create. And that's what I would like to think of as an impact we created.
Brilliant. That's a really fantastic story. I like that. And obviously, a big part of your role is definitely about dealing with people. How would you describe your leadership style, especially when we talk about engaging and communicating team members?
So I didn't know there's a term like this that existed, and I recently figured out that's what the term is called. So it's called extreme ownership. And basically, what I like to think about is the biggest challenge with data, like we've spoken about a couple of times, is a lot of things fail, and there's no dearth of articles and topics where it says 85% of AI projects fail, 90%. And so the reason they fail is, and I don't think the business is to blame. I like to feel that everything needs to be owned by the data team. And my leadership style is one of ownership, where I say, the success and failure of this is ours and ours alone. We can't blame anyone else. And so we need to keep morphing and evolving to a form where what we want to do and what we want to work on is useful for the business, and people also find value in it. So we approach everything from that lens. And so it means building things quickly, building iteratively, and not wasting 6 months on building something that could be built in, say, 6 days or 6 weeks. And so trying to do things in a fashion where we fail fast, where we learn from our mistakes and we own our mistakes rather than passing it on. I think that's the leadership style that I try to follow, and I try to get the team to follow, which means I am not the only owner. Everybody in the team owns their work and they feel responsible for their work. And so that mindset has definitely made a difference, because people don't just say, somebody gave me this challenge and I've done it. It's, I want to do this challenge and I've solved this, and this is my own baby. And that's the approach we take.
And what about when you mentioned that a lot of these projects are failing, and a big hurdle there is going to be the senior leadership. How do you communicate the message upwards that when a project does fail, how it's going to get better, or how that it needs to fail to learn, stuff like that?
Yeah, and so the one thing I've seen with senior leadership is they have 30 seconds to listen to you and then say yep or no. And so we try to morph that whole thing on why it failed and what we've learned into a 30-second pitch or a 60-second pitch, right? So we said, we did this, we learned this is the wrong thing. And the first thing that I pitched them is, what did we learn and why did it fail? And what will you do differently? And people are saying, people are more than happy to say, at least you know why it failed and go ahead and try it again. And and if there's a benefit in doing it, rather than couching it in technical terms and talking about models and talking about algorithms, just talk about what we've learned and what is the problem and how confident are we that we'll fix it again or we can't fix it. And I think leadership strongly believe in, at least the people I've worked with so far, strongly believe in data and algorithms, strongly believe in the value it can bring. And all they want is this level of comfort that we guys know what we're talking about and we know what we'll fix. And if we can give them that level of comfort, they're happy to let us go and play with it.
Absolutely. And where do you currently see the biggest opportunity for improvement within Global Fashion Group right now?
So there's a lot of scope for improvement for us, and from an operational point of view, which is how do we fulfill and deliver items, and how do we bring in the right assortment at the right time. And already there are people who do it at scale. For example, Stitch Fix is a good example where they personalize the inventory to an extent where there is no wastage. And so we want to be able to do something like that, and that's a really good opportunity where we all know what the trends are going to be. We all know what sizes people want to buy. We know how deep people want to buy. So for example, the jumper you're wearing, maybe I know for a fact you're going to buy that jumper again in say 3 months, and your size is a size M. And I know you're going to come back, and if I can extrapolate that out to everybody that looks like you and feels like you and shops like you, I should be able to replenish it at the right time instead of you coming to the site and saying, yep, it's out of stock. That stuff, like, it should never go out of stock. And I think that's an operational thing that we can solve using data very, very cleverly.
And what was the biggest mistake you made during your career?
I think I probably wouldn't call it a mistake, but the biggest thing that I feel that I could have done sooner is get on the open source things much faster. So a lot more than half my career I spent on commercial tools and applications. I have nothing against them, but the problem is it doesn't let you. There are so many limitations and constraints, for better or for worse, because they can't let you go crazy and play with it. So for example, if you use SAS as an example, if you want to go crazy with your forecasting techniques, there is only so much you can do with your forecasting because the software doesn't allow you to do it. But if you use say R or Python, you can do anything you want, and then the ability to do anything you want also then translates into opening it up for the business and explaining it in a way where they can then start contributing. And I've seen that happen more from a place where you can build your own algorithms rather than using pre-packaged algorithms, which you can't explain, which you can't control, and you can't do it. And I think that's something that I feel I could have done much sooner, but I'm still none the wiser for having done it now.
There you go. What are your thoughts on the impact of COVID-19 right now?
It's apart from the people side of things, which is definitely sad, and the fact that it's causing a lot of hard times for a lot of people. I think from a business's point of view, the famous Vladimir Lenin quote is what comes to mind, which is, it goes this way, right? For a lot of decades, nothing happens, and then in a few weeks, a lot of decades happen, and that's what COVID has been. A lot of transformational projects like the operational that I was talking about, a lot of marketing projects that we wanted to do. These were all stuck in backlogs and pipelines for like the next 2-3 years, and everything got unshelved and got done in like super fast turnaround times. And so what COVID has done is, for the businesses, things that they want to do and they've been planning to do, it has supercharged and precipitated them in a way where things can happen much faster. So that's one thing that I can at least see as a good output of what COVID has done to the businesses.
And are you guys back in the office now, or are you still working from home?
No, we're still working from home. Some of our offices have opened up. So the offices in the UK have opened up already. In Berlin have opened up, but in the other Southeast Asian areas and Australia, we've still partially open. We've not completely open. So you have the flexibility to go to work if you want to. And I don't think if you have the flexibility, you would like to go to work. So we're still working from home.
Yeah. What's your top working from home tip?
Is don't follow a 9-to-5 regimen. Everyone talks about following a regimen. I just don't. I just follow whatever works for me. I go with, okay, now I feel like throwing myself into it and getting stuff done, and I do it. And then I just want to switch off and maybe get a game on a PS4 or read a book, whatever it is I want to do, just go and do it. And I think if you have that flow, I think it works. Otherwise, the problems with the office setup is you have to be at their 9-to-5. And so there's a lot of inefficiencies, but at home, you can actually change that up and do it differently. And that's something I do.
What's the best piece of advice you ever received?
The best piece of advice I've received is never let things get to my head. Never let it get to your head. And that also is something one of my English teachers told me is success or failure, don't let it get to your head. Let it be. The equanimity is something that's really important to me. And I think that's the best piece of advice I've ever received, which is if things go very well, okay, just maintain a calm head. And if things completely fail and flop, it's okay. It's okay. You can come back from it. And so that's something I really like.
What are you curious about right now?
So one thing I read recently is there are 4 types of generations in every, when we live, there are 4 kinds of generations. So each generation, say 22 years. And so there's a cyclical pattern to these generations. So the first generation is a revolutionary who changed the society and changed everything. Then the next, so say 1920s and 30s, when people changed everything, and then they changed their lifestyles, they changed, so much invention happened. And then the next generation is the one that is more conservative. The baby boomers and everyone else who are really conservative, who don't want to do stuff, who are all about morals and conservatism. And then the one after that is more pragmatic. And then the fourth one is cynical, which is our generation. And then the one after that is going to be revolutionary. I'm really curious what the next generation after us is going to do, how they're going to revolutionize things, be it political systems, social systems, technological systems. These are all ripe for change. And there's a lot of cynicism right now. And I feel, and I'm very curious how the next generation is going to change all of these things. So that's what I'm really curious about.
And who is your favorite thought leader or author, whether that's in the data space or in business in general?
So I've been so the different people over different times. Off late, this author called Robert Greene, who wrote the book called The Laws of Human Nature. So he wrote about these 18 fundamental laws of how humans behave and what they do. And I think he's my favorite author so far because he, for good or for bad, if you read that book, you almost feel like he's actually figured out a way to put every single human being you've ever met into one of these 18 folds. And there are different attributes, and you can actually see what triggers them, what pisses them off, what turns them on, and why they behave in a particular way. And I think that's an influence that I'm really keen to learn more from.
What is your favorite quote?
I wouldn't say it's a favorite quote. My favorite quote, or actually my favorite poem, is the whole poem called "If" by Rudyard Kipling. I'm not sure if you've heard it. So, like, it says, if everyone around you is losing their heads and you can keep it, and you can still be equanimous. So basically, the lines that I like the most are, if you can meet triumph and disaster and treat those two impulses just the same, and if you can keep your head about you when everyone around you is losing theirs and blaming it on you, if you can trust what you've said is valid and still and then give people the ability to doubt you and all of this stuff. So basically, it talks about the dichotomies that exist and having to maintain an equal head and equanimity. And that's my favorite poem and favorite quote.
And last question, what advice would you give for aspiring leaders in data?
The one about ownership is what I tell people who I mentor and who I talk to is, don't wait for somebody else to make your data program successful. More often than not, things are going to not go well, and you need to own it and make sure that you take it to the other end, because otherwise you're going to be one of those other people talking about why data programs don't succeed and always fail. So I'm always going to talk about owning it and having a bias to action towards your data program. So that's my advice for people.
Great. That was Kshira Saagar, Group Director of Data Science and Analytics at Global Fashion Group. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, Paul. Appreciate it.